The best of Money Matters. The Hot Seat.
Welcome to the Hot Seat, a debate segment where ideas clash and insights spark. Hello, I'm your host, Hongbin Jeong. Now, coming back from our Chinese New Year reunion dinners, some new couples may have heard the question repeatedly, when are you going to have kids? And for those who aren't ready, your response probably was along the lines of, it's too expensive. So in a city where the cost of living continues to climb, is it truly expensive to raise a child here in Singapore? Now, with estimates placing the cost of raising a child to age 18 at over $220,000, surpassing even the CPF full retirement sum, the financial burden is undeniable. And despite government subsidies exceeding $150,000 per child, many parents still struggle to balance childcare expenses, education costs, and everyday necessities. Others argue that while costs can be high, careful financial planning and conscious lifestyle choices can make raising children more manageable. So, is raising a child in Singapore as expensive as it seems, or is it a matter of perspective? Well, earlier this week, we asked you, our listeners, whether or not you thought raising a child here in Singapore is expensive or not. And taking a look at some of the polls, it looks like on Instagram, a majority has said that it is too expensive, with 85% saying that it's too expensive, 13% saying that it's bearable, and 2% saying it's not at all expensive. So, before we hear from our guests and dive deeper into this debate, here's a disclaimer. The views and arguments presented by our interviewees do not necessarily reflect their personal beliefs or opinions. Instead, they are here to provide a fresh perspective on the topic at hand. Now, without further ado, let me introduce our guests who will be sharing their perspectives on this pressing topic. On the side of it is not too expensive to raise a child here in Singapore is Marlina Kwok, who is a retirement specialist at IPP Financial Advisors, and the one who argues that it is too expensive to raise a child in Singapore is Kelly Ang, who is a full-time mom and part-time freelance writer. Welcome to the Hot Seat.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi.
Thank you so much for joining us. All right. You know, raising a child in Singapore, apparently it's estimated to cost at least $227,760 by the age of 18, surpassing the CPF full retirement sum. Now, even after factoring government subsidies of over $150,000 per child, parents still face significant out-of-pocket expenses, from pregnancy-related costs to, childcare, education, and daily necessities. So perhaps we can start off with you, Marlina. You think that it is not too expensive to raise a child here in Singapore, but given that raising a child now costs more than a person's retirement savings, doesn't this reinforce the idea that having children is an unaffordable luxury? I mean, if parents have to sacrifice their financial future, how can we say that raising children here in Singapore is truly feasible?
Okay, so the perceived figure seems a large figure,
Yeah.
But the actual cost, if you net off the government subsidies, actually 2/3 of the costs are subsidized. So making the amount of close to 80,000 over 18 years. So that actually translates to about $4,500 a year.
Okay.
And which means $400 per month. So now, if we look at this $400 per month cost, it seems like a cost that could be afforded by many families. Yes, and with government, many financial aids, like for example, it's more of a matter of a choice. So for example, if a pregnant mother chooses to deliver normal in KK hospital, let's say a C ward, this mother could just come up with out-of-pocket expenses of just $100 according to a KKH website. It's more than your lifestyle choices here. So you can deliver at $100 out.
So you have that cheaper option.
Yes, you have that cheaper options here. So it's just that if you are willing to take on those options.
Right, I see. Well, Kelly, you're the one who are arguing that it is too expensive to raise a child here in Singapore, and you are a full-time mom as well. I mean, while the costs are high, don't government subsidies help offset a significant portion of these expenses? Like Marlina has mentioned, I mean, if families plan wisely and prioritize essential spending, doesn't this prove that raising children is still financially possible?
Well, so that's the thing, right? I think when it comes to raising children, I'd actually argue that equipping them well, nurturing their talents, their skills, and their interests, and developing them holistically is as essential as just, your bread and butter, day-to-day food, shelter, education. And I feel that in order for them to thrive as adults, these things are essential, for them to grow up well.
Right.
Putting aside the high cost of day-to-day living, which is, I have a family of 5 kids. And as it is, we spend a combined 20 to 25% of our income per month on groceries, food, meals.
Wow.
Yeah, and I know there are things like CDC vouchers that are there to offset these things, but it's a one-off, once every 6 months kind of thing. So that aside, raising children is really expensive, even if you don't look at just food, right? Planning wisely can only do so much. For example, if you plan to eat at hawker centers, coffee shops and food courts all the way when you eat out, it still adds up. It's quite a lot. And we only do meals at those family type of restaurants in malls once or twice a month. It's still really expensive.
I see. As a mother, you want the best for your child, so you want to do as much as you can. For working parents especially, childcare is one of the biggest expenses, right? An example is the infant care at anchor operator centers cost about $8,640 per year, while full-day childcare fees add another $13,640 per year. And even with government subsidies, many families struggle to afford childcare, often turning to domestic helpers or grandparents for support. So, Marlina, if childcare, alone costs more than $13,000 per year, how can middle-class families manage, especially if they have more than one child? Doesn't this show that raising a child in Singapore is only feasible for wealthier families?
Okay, so the cost that you mentioned haven't factored into the basic and additional subsidies which government would give. And let's say for a median household income family earning $10,800 per month, okay, the family will actually entitle for a subsidy close to about $640. Okay, and that after offset, right, left the family with $700 per month out of pocket. And this out of pocket, right, government further, you still have things to use, which is your CDA account. And if you have planned it well, for example, like you use the baby cash bonus gift, setting aside, matching the $1 up to the $4,000, you have $13,000 to use in your CDA account to offset these $700 per month expenses for the entire duration of your infant care.
Okay.
16 months is taken care by the CDA. So there's zero out-of-pocket expenses again.
Okay.
And and even with this, like the childcare cost, okay, after the subsidy is only about $400 per month. So in relative to the median household income, it's only about less than 4% of the family's total income. So it's equivalent to many discretionary spending like entertainment or dining outside. So how can we say that it is expensive to raise a child?
I see. If you put it that way, I see how the numbers are played out. Well, Kelly, then, while childcare is expensive, isn't it, a temporary cost that parents only bear for a few years? If parents adjust their work arrangements or rely on family support, like many do, or even take on, the government subsidies, and you don't really have much to pay out of pocket, wouldn't this make raising children more financially manageable?
So I think that actually imagining that having all your childcare expenses subsidized at a young age, it's a bit of a fallacy to think that it's not expensive to raise children when they're older. In fact, I think the expenses do increase as they grow older. There are lots of things that come into play here. I think one of the things that many parents would argue is essential would be extra classes, right? If your child needs help and you're unable to help them, you would, put money into sending them for the classes that you feel would help them thrive for a better future. Also, if your child does well after PSLE and goes to one of the more prestigious secondary schools, the monthly cost, I just checked earlier this morning, is anywhere from $300 per month. So all these costs really add up. If your child makes it to one of those places, schools, wouldn't you let your child go?
Right.
It's like for a better future, right? Tertiary education also can cost thousands of dollars a year. So when you take all this into consideration, and these are not subsidized, even with the government grants and subsidies for tertiary education, it's still a sizable amount. And I think it contributes to the 220,000 figure that you quoted earlier on.
I see. Well, some also argue that the cost of raising a child depends on lifestyle choices. I mean, expenses like holidays, private schools, enrichment classes, and high-end baby products can significantly drive up costs. However, conservative estimates excluding luxury spending still place the cost of raising a child at over $220,000. So, Kelly, I mean, doesn't some families' experience show that disciplined spending and prioritization can make parenthood feasible? I mean, if families live within their means, shouldn't they still be able to raise children without extreme financial strain?
So I think that feasibility is not really the question here.
Okay.
You're really looking at the quality of life that you're giving your child. You want the best for your child, right? And I think the best for your child, it differs from parent to parent. So someone might be okay with your child just scraping passes in school, but for other parents, they would say, oh, you need to get much better grades for a better future, kind of thing. So I think that, going back to your question of whether or not it's feasible to raise a child on a tighter budget, definitely it is. But there's no denying that it is expensive, right? All the things that you want to provide for your child to have a better future, which is essential in my opinion, because you don't want to just raise a child to be there. You want a child to do well and enjoy life in whatever version of a best life they want to have. So all these things, they add up. And it is feasible insofar as there's always an opportunity cost, right? But there's no denying that it is expensive.
Right.
Yeah.
I see. Marlina, we want to bring you in again. I mean, if parents do avoid luxuries, a conservative estimate still puts child raising costs at nearly $250,000. If that's the baseline, doesn't that prove that raising a child in Singapore is financially overwhelming?
Not really. I mean, if you don't do all those unnecessary spendings, based on Maslow hierarchy of needs, focus on the base needs, food, and then safety needs. Our education system is one of the top in the world, and then our MOE has been continue enhancing our education programs. And in school, there are so many support in terms of the free online resources, SLS, remedial classes, and all that. If it's tuition, then it's not really necessary, in my opinion, because for myself, I want to encourage my children to be independent. So I want them to experience the problem solving. I don't want to help them solve through tuitions or enrichment classes. Yes. So in that aspect, I think we are robbing the child opportunity to experience some kind of making failures or mistakes. We are in a society with so much pressure to be perfect, to get good grades and all that. But to think about what the future economy needs, with all the AI changes, and we should rethink, what are the skills that is needed by the child, and then work on that problem-solving skills rather than blindly sending them for all those courses that seems good to follow our peers. Yes.
I see. Well, on that note, let's take a look at some of the education fees here. Primary school education in Singapore is free for citizens, and government secondary school fees are relatively low at $5 to $6 per month. However, 80% of parents still send their children for tuition, with some paying over $250 per month. We have enrichment programs, international schools, and extracurricular activities that can also drive up costs, making education one of the largest expenses for parents. Kelly, I know you've been on the stance that you want the best for your children, but aren't tuition and enrichment choices, enrichment classes choices rather than necessities? I mean, if parents take an active role in their child's education, wouldn't kids still be able to succeed without excessive financial investment?
I think the key word here is excessive. Well, so I think that if your child is struggling in school and asks for some help, in that case, as a parent, if you're able to help your child, that's great, right? But, I think for the majority of us parents who are working parents with two working parents, when you come back after work and your child is back after school, there's just a precious 1 to 2 hours of downtime after that. And I don't think for many parents and children, no one wants to spend that 1 to 2 hours stressing out over troubleshooting homework or giving them the help that they want. with their work. So I think for many parents who send their children to tuition and classes, academic classes, they're trading time for money, and being able to, have that downtime to relax and all that is essential as well, in my opinion. And as for enrichment classes, right? So I think enrichment classes, when you look at it from a non-academic stance, they are essential for nurturing talent and interests. Of course, there's always a subsidized option. I mean, my kids have gone for the subsidized options as well. But there's only so much that you can do with the subsidized options, right? And sometimes they're just not good enough to be picked up by national teams or to go for the free national squad stuff. So then they still want to, stretch their interest in a particular area like dance, art, or something like that. Then you will have to pay for it. Of course, you can say that it's not essential. They won't die without it. But I would argue that developing them holistically and giving them these tools to practice their skills and nurture their interests would set them up for success later in life. I mean, they can enjoy themselves. They can play music if they're stressed and things like that. Yeah, so it's more than just academics. I think it's looking at, what it takes to raise a child as a whole person. Yeah.
I see. Well, Marlina, on the back of what Kelly said, if tuition and enrichment classes have become almost mandatory for children as well to stay competitive, as well as exploring things that they like to do, isn't it this an unavoidable financial burden on parents? I mean, if families need to spend thousands per year on additional education, doesn't that prove that raising a child is truly too expensive?
Okay, so with the mainstream education, it's almost free, for primary school, and for secondary school, it's only costing $5 per month. And the families actually have a lot of financial means to cater to the enrichment program. So let's say if it costs $250 per month, this only take up about 2.3% of the household median income. Again, it's not a significant expenses. So if we really want to send, we can do so. And hence, I'm just relating that in terms of cost, it's not that expensive to the income that we are earning, so-called the gross median household income. And second thing is, school have provided so much free online resources, in terms of CCAs as well, and there are those subsidized options. So it's more like pursuing better things, like better or some branded enrichment programs that we were kind of influenced to think that they are of superior, just like organic food to the conventional food for the baby. Scientifically, in terms of nutrition, they are actually no difference. But people are still buying the organic food.
I see.
So in that context, I would say that even if you want to send, for example, 1 or 2 enrichment course, it's fine. And in fact, it's considered affordable according to our median household monthly income in Singapore.
I see. I think we've gotten some great perspectives on both sides of the argument here. Just to end off and wrap up our debate here, in a country where raising just one child can cost more than the entire retirement fund, should families then still rethink about having children? I mean, is the issue truly affordability, or has the perception of what a good upbringing should cost been inflated beyond necessity? Maybe, Kelly, we can start off with you.
I mean, I think that whether or not you have children, life in Singapore is expensive. Yeah, like a box of strawberries can cost $7, right? Adults and children like them the same. So I think that recognizing this doesn't detract from, having children. I think that, as I said, it's always a choice that you make. And knowing that something is expensive just means that you have to make your choices accordingly. And, there are non-material trade-offs as well. You spend this amount of money raising your children to be the best versions of themselves that you think they can be, but you think it's worth it, right? Because you just enjoy the process. Yeah, so yes, it's expensive, but no, we should still have children. Yeah.
All right. Well, Marlina, is the issue truly affordability, or has the perception of what a good upbringing should cost been inflated beyond necessity?
The issue doesn't lie much on affordability because, as what I have shared earlier, if you divide the cost after the subsidies, it's only $400 per month per child. Okay, and it's more like a lifestyle preference these days. That people are thinking, is not a priority. And yet, for a woman, our fertility age actually start decreasing after 30, regardless of how prosperous is the country, right, or of any health advancement. So what I'm saying is, there is an urgency, okay, to look into this issue because our, in terms of our birth rate are declining very rapidly. In fact, figure last year shows that it's 0.97, which is far lower than 2.1, our Singapore, which should be the Singapore replacement rate. And it's such a sad thing to me because I started family when I was quite young. I started having kids when I'm 27. And there are a lot of benefits, financial benefits in terms of tax, in terms of housing, in terms of social and emotional well-being. There's a study shows that even married counterpart are actually earning more than the single counterpart. So perhaps our country and we need to relook in terms of our values, and how can we increase our birth rate. If not, I just worried that with this continuing, we might have more of a foreign populations or workforce coming in to replace us.
I see.
Yes.
I see. Well, whether or not it is expensive or not, it looks like we still should not rethink about having children, but do have children. Well, thank you so much both for joining me today.
Thank you.
Thank you. We've been speaking to Kelly Ang, who is a full-time mom and part-time freelance writer, and Marlina Kwok, who is a retirement specialist at IPP Financial Advisors. This has been The Hot Seat, where it's not just about winning an argument, but about understanding the complex layers that underpin today's hottest topics. I've been your host, Hongbin Jeong.
To listen to more great interviews, download our podcasts at audio.sg or download the audio app. That's AWEDIO, audio at the App Store and Google Play.